Hello, my name is Floralove Katz, and I'm here to introduce you to a remarkable and gentle man, Mr. David Shentow, prisoner of the Nazi Holocaust, number 72585. David was only 17 years old when he and his father were deported from Belgium to a slave labor camp in France. His mother and his two little sisters came to the train station to see them off. David would never set eyes on them ever again. David was transported to the extermination camp of Auschwitz and subsequently to the concentration camps of Warsaw and Dachau. Within an hour of arriving at the Nazi Extermination Camp, Auschwitz, David was tattooed on his left forearm with the number 72585, the number he bears to the present day. As David has said, you started out as a person, as a human being, a member of society. You then suddenly became a prisoner. Then you were stripped of your individuality and were reduced to a number. Within weeks, you became a zombie, hardly able to drag one foot in front of the other, the result of privation, starvation, sadistic beatings, horrific medical experimentation, and endless tortures. Eventually, you degraded even further. You became a living corpse, a Musselman. The dead corpses were stripped of their teeth, their hair, and their skin were used for soap and for lampshades. Millions of their bodies were burned to ashes that were belched out of the chimneys in crematoria in 7 extermination camps across Poland. Many people perceived that fighting global anti-Semitism then, much like today, wasn't their problem and isn't their issue. A number of righteous individuals did prove, however, that each of us can make a difference in fighting evil. Of the 6 million murdered Jewish civilians, 1 million were babies and little children under 10 years of age. Every year, on the annual Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, people stand silently to remember the 6 million for 1 minute. Were we to stand silent for each of the 6 million, we would have to remain quiet for 11 years. What makes the Holocaust so singular a genocide is not only the magnitude and the efficacy of the killing process, but the very institutionalization of anti-Semitism and the procedures for alienation and murders of Jewish people. These procedures involved not only the state government, and government at every level, but also the military, the church, right down to community, charity, and indeed children's organizations. Tragically, there have been other genocides. Some, like Rwanda and Darfur, could have been prevented if only based on the knowledge gained from the Holocaust itself. Nor were Jewish civilians the only ones systematically targeted for murder by the Nazis. 15,000 gay men and women were incarcerated in Nazi concentration camps. 60% of them perished. Another 5.5 million enemies of the German state included mentally and physically handicapped individuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, communists, trade unionists, socialists, and between 200,000 to 500,000 Rom or Gypsy people. Over many decades, through his presentations to classes and at gatherings, David Shentow has borne witness with remarkable courage and fortitude. Each presentation, of course, exhausts him as he relives the horrors. But in his public presentations, David reflects his deep sense of moral obligation to speak for the dead. He offers us insights through his ordeals so that we in turn can bear witness when he and other remaining survivors can no longer speak for themselves. To paraphrase Edmund Burke, all that is required for evil to prevail is for good people to do nothing, to remain silent and uninvolved. Thanks to David Shentow for bearing witness so courageously in these interviews and throughout the past decades. And thanks to each of you for being engaged and for bearing witness yourselves now and into the future.
So I'm with David Shentow. It's November 5th, 2006. It's the start of Holocaust Week. You were born in Warsaw.
Born in Warsaw, and within 6 weeks my family moved to Belgium.
Now, why Belgium?
Belgium, good question. My uncle Philip, who left Poland on, I don't know, I think they wanted to go into the army, and he was not interested. So he decided that he will look around and find out where would be the best place to go. And he contacted my father that Belgium would be fantastic. Even if you don't stay in Belgium, from Belgium you can always come over to North America. Antwerp being my hometown, very industrial city, diamond capital of the world, and if it's good for the diamond people, it's good for any trade. My father was a tailor by trade, master tailor, I might add. He right away did well, and he said to my mother, we don't have to go any further.
Now
he made a living right away, bought a house within a year.
And he spoke Polish, obviously?
Yeah, my father spoke Polish.
And did he speak French as well to be in Belgium?
No,
or was
my father, sadly enough, never learned even Flemish. Always a hard-working tailor. We lived in a typical Jewish neighborhood. You would call it a ghetto. 3 or 4 synagogues on one street. They called them the Stiebels, small little synagogues. So he spoke always with my mother in Yiddish. It's only when I started to go to school that I started to learn Flemish and French.
You had an uncle in Montreal and one in New York City at that point in time?
Yes, both tailors, both bakers by trade.
Right.
Now these 2 uncles are first cousins because my mother and my father were first cousins. I think today it's against the law, isn't it?
I don't think so.
First cousins to get married. Oh, it's allowed?
I think it actually it is.
Yeah, and the Jewish religion also.
Yeah?
Yeah, well, my father and my mother were first cousins, and nothing was more embarrassing because my mother and my father were first cousins, and their parents were 2 brothers. So I remember when I went to school and in Belgium, they asked my mother's name and my father's name. Nothing was more embarrassing when I said, same name. He says, no, I know your father's name, but your mother's name can't be the same. I said they were first cousins. So it was always a little embarrassing.
So you moved, you were at 6 weeks old, now you're in Belgium. Antwerp. And there were plans originally to either go to one of these uncles, right, in Montreal and New York, which that never happened.
Yes, because my uncle Max was already in New York. And he felt that my father should make plans. This was in 1925, 26, 27. But because he was so much involved in his tailoring, well known in the community, and he made a good living, and he was better off than my uncle in New York. He says, my America is right here in Antwerp. And he felt that he's not going to go any further because, as I mentioned a minute ago, he bought a house within a year and brought up 3 children, very well known in the community, very much involved in the Jewish theater. He was their tailor, so he decided he'll stay. Of course, we found out that it was the biggest mistake he made.
Now tell me, you were, as a child, you moved at 6 weeks. What do you remember about being, say, a 6-year-old, a 10-year-old?
Well, what do I remember? Let me think now. Not much different than a child in this country. Brought up not orthodox, but something like Agudat Israel. No, not even like Agudat Israel, because I remember when we went to the synagogue, women sat upstairs. But a loving community, very, very loving parents, but my father always, typical Jewish father, kept me at a distance, but I know he had some big plans for me. And made a lot of friends in my neighborhood. I could live in my street for the rest of my life. He had at least 4 synagogues, as I mentioned a minute ago, 2 or 3 bakeries, butcher shop, all on one street. So very, very happy and very, very enjoyable life.
Now, when was it, how old were you when your father decided time was up and it was time to think about getting out of Europe?
Well, when it was time to make the move, well, it started, of course, September 39, when Germany invaded Poland. And my father was very, very upset, especially when he received letters from his parents after the Germans occupied the city where he lived, which was not too far from Warsaw, that it's Yom Kippur every day. So he knew that they're starving. And this is when he talked about it. Didn't do anything, but he talked about what should we do. But who would have believed that within a year Germany will occupy or declare war on Belgium, Holland and France, and these 3 countries would be occupied in less than 20 days.
In something that I had read you wrote after you had attended the March of the Living, you said that things were normal until 1941.
Until let me think, yes, as a matter of fact, I remember when the war broke out the 10th of May 1940. My father thought, well, this is the time that we should try to escape. I remember we packed, we put all our belongings together, and this was done very, very early in the morning or very late at night, I don't remember now. This was 1940, 66 years ago. So he hired a truck with a driver to take us to the French border. And it took us a whole day to get to the French border, the town of Moucron. And the biggest shock when we got off that camion, how do you say camion? Truck. The Germans were there already.
So but now I find this ironic. You were born in Warsaw, and the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising was October of the year prior. So were you aware of that?
The uprising was in 43.
Was in 43, but the ghetto already had started. Sorry, in 1940.
42, maybe in 41. Yes, yes, that I know.
Right. So actually, it was October 1940 when they started gathering people. Okay.
In Poland.
Right. Now, there's an irony there because you must have felt at that point in time.
Yes, my father.
Weren't we lucky we had moved?
But nobody believed the rumors, especially within a year when the Warsaw Jews were gathered together and the official ghetto. We talked. Jewish people kept on living in Antwerp as if nothing happened. They felt bad, but they didn't think it's that bad. What is so heartbreaking that even when they started to open concentration camps, they still said, couldn't be. And then, of course, with the gas chambers, they couldn't accept it. As a matter of fact, when I was arrested in 1942, and I was sent to a French labor camp, they said I'm one of the lucky ones, because they picked other people for Malin, which was a transit camp, and everybody knew that the transit camp goes to Poland. So they said, you're a lot better off to be in a French labor camp.
When you were 15 or 16 then at this point
I was
in time?
15 when the war broke out,
yes.
and I was taken away the 5th of August 42 when I was 17 years old.
Let's take a step back. When did you start wearing, you mentioned that...
The Yellow Star?
The Yellow Star, because you mentioned...
I think it was 1941.
Okay, and you mentioned something about it, because you said first they took your luxuries, your bike, your radio...
One law at a time. First the Yellow Star, then Jews are not allowed into the parks, Jews are not allowed to go to school, one after the other. Curfew, You have to be in by 7 p.m. You're not allowed to leave the house until 8 a.m. And rationing, of course. But all these things did not bother me personally. The rations, of course, were very, very small. But because my father did well, he always managed to buy food on the black market.
When you say they didn't bother you personally, let's take a step back on that, because you did mention that the yellow star bothered you because you used to hide it.
Yes, but it didn't affect my life.
No.
All I did is when I walked in the street downtown, which I didn't have to go that often, I would just hold my hand like that, or I would have a book. So I would always manage to hide it. And even if somebody would look at it, they'd look a little bit surprised, but it did not really affect my life. We lived with it.
Was it a shame, or what was it?
Embarrassment, yes, embarrassment. Why? God knows, I don't know. It's just that each time when I would walk downtown, of course in my neighborhood everybody had one, but when I walked downtown, people would look around, oh, that's a Jew. Not that they've never seen Jews, or they could be thinking, gee, he doesn't look like a Jew, or something like that.
Do you remember the day the Gestapo arrived at your house?
The day the Gestapo arrived...
At your home. You were 17.
You mean for me to be taken away? Well, actually, it wasn't exactly that way. We received a letter from the Gestapo that we have to meet such and such a day at the train station, and that we are going to be sent to a labor camp in France. And you're allowed to bring a suitcase, and you'll be wearing your clothes, and you'll be working hard. And this letter was sent to me and to my father. My mother and my two sisters were still at home. So we didn't know what to do until everybody says, you're a lucky man, because other people would get letters to meet in Malines. Malines, of course, from there everybody knew that the trains would be going to Poland. And we knew about the ghettos. I don't think the word concentration camp came up. So we met at the train station, and I should have known better. I was 17. The minute we walked into the train, we had to hand in our identification papers. So I knew there's something I don't like. We were each given a loaf of bread, but this didn't bother us because we brought lots of food along. And we left about 6 in the morning, I think about 800 Jewish people, all from my neighborhood. And I remember my mother and my two sisters came to the train station, because we lived not too far from the station, I think about 10 minutes walk. And we looked at the same stairs quite often that leads to the, what do you call it when you...
Platform.
Platform. And this is the first time when my two sisters were hanging on my mother's skirt. I was 17, Esther was 15, Paula was 13. And they looked at their mother, my mother, and this is the first time I saw my mother crying. So as I walked up the stairs to the platform with my father, I thought myself, should I turn around and wave once more? We talked about it so often. I wish I wouldn't. I wish I didn't. Because when I turned around, I saw my mother crying so hard. And this is the sight that I'll never ever forget. As a matter of fact, when we were in Belgium the last time, I always walked the same stairs, up and down, and I told the Rose exactly where my mother was standing with my two sisters.
You left at 6 in the morning.
6
You
in the morning,
arrived
we
at 8
arrived
p.m.
until 6 at night.
6 at night, so 12 hours.
12 hours, which should not have taken that long. And we arrived in a small French town by the name of Dannes-Camiers.
Go back to the train ride. What was the train ride like?
Good, passenger trains, and comfortable. And it was not the Gestapo, it was the Wehrmacht, regular German soldiers.
Okay.
So we felt that just maybe, as a matter of fact, all these rumors, if we work hard, you'll be all right, not to worry about it. I said, well, maybe this is it, maybe we'll make it. But once we arrived in Dannes-Camiers, the same soldiers were just a little bit, they were not as sympathetic. They were a little harder now. We had to get off the trains fast, carry your suitcases, which was heavy because we took everything we didn't know. Some of the people, and this is so sad, brought along tennis rackets and musical instruments. They thought you work all day and in the evening you're on your own. So after walking for...
But you knew otherwise?
I beg pardon?
You knew otherwise?
Well, we knew about the work camp. No, and there were some people already there in Dannes-Camiers from previous transport. But they never wrote, or maybe they did and we didn't believe, whatever, we didn't know. But no, let's put it this way, I didn't know. So when we walked into the French labor camp, and I see all the other people from my hometown looking at us, and they were not allowed to get close to us. I said, oh my God, I didn't recognize them. They were there only about a month, maybe at the most 6 weeks. Haggard, skinny, their eyes deep into the head. I said, my God, what happened to them? They're here only about a month. That's when afterwards they told us they work as very, very hard. And the rations are very, very small. And we go to work at 5 in the morning and we don't come back until 5, 6 in the evening. And then we have to do sport, running, go flat on your stomach, jump up. They just kept you busy until about 8, 9 o'clock at night.
Now you still had, you mentioned this quite a bit, your suitcase.
Yes, we were allowed to keep our suitcases, and we were assigned to a bunk, my father and myself. Not a comfortable bunk, but each one had their own bunk. And we had our own clothes, they didn't cut our hair. It was a typical labor camp, and if you had money, you could buy food, additional food.
From the guards?
From the guards. The first thing, of course, when we entered the camp, they said, anybody who has jewelry, money, they have to hand it in. Well, we knew better. Some of them did hand it in, some didn't, because we found out afterwards that this was for them. This was not to send to Germany. This is for their own pocket. So we managed. It was hard work, but we managed. And we were there for 3 months. And before I go one step further, I thought if this is it, sure, I work hard, but we'll make it. If this is what we heard, what we heard sounded a lot worse. So I figured that's the way it's going to be.
I just want to go back to the suitcase. How important was that suitcase? Because you mentioned it quite a bit.
We had food in it,
Right.
clothes, to change clothes, because they did not give you any change of clothes. You had to have your own clothes. A lot of people brought 2, 3 loaves of bread, salamis, everything, because we felt that we should have something to eat. But of course, we found out not much later when we worked so hard that we ran out of food in no time. And the little bit of food that they gave us, we were starving. This was within a week, we were starving. The biggest shock was, and this will make a big impression, the camp that we were was about 30 kilometers from Dieppe. Now if the word Dieppe means something to you, and this was 2 weeks later. We were on August 5th in Dannes-Camiers. The 15th of August was the first invasion from England to Dieppe. And we heard the bombing, we heard the shooting, so I said, that's it, the war is over. I started to put everything back in my suitcase. I was just waiting for the door to open and you can go home again. The shooting was going all night. In the morning we did not have to go to work. And I was just waiting, packed, just ready to go home. I figured, well, 2 weeks, that's all I can take. And of course, it's known today that this was the biggest fiasco. I think 90% of the Canadian soldiers were killed, the rest taken prisoners. And the Wehrmacht came back and the party was over, back to work as if nothing happened.
Let's take a step back before we move on to the other camps. Your father left with you.
Yes.
He went, but he managed, or he said he had stomach pains,
Yes,
abdominal
yes.
cramps.
So you do listen, do you?
I read about what you had to say. So
where did you read it?
this was in an article that was from March of the Living.
God.
So this is where I'm getting
Yes,
this from.
he had abdominal, it was horrendous.
Mhm.
And he went to the camp doctor, because it was a labor camp, they said they can't do anything for him, that let him go back home, back to Antwerp. Well, he says, how can I go back? My son is here. He says, well, he's not going with you. He has to stay. So I had a nice long chat with my father. And I said, go. I'll manage.
And you were 17.
I was 17. And the next day, a truck, was about half a dozen people were allowed to get back home. And this is when I knew that I'm strictly on my own. And I just didn't have the strength to tell my father, please don't leave me.
Do you remember the last moments you had with him? Because you never saw him again.
I would have never saw him again.
So what did you say to him? And what did he say to
Well,
you?
we hugged and we kissed, and he said the war won't be over, and he was told by other prisoners, once you come back into Antwerp, you have to go into hiding. That doesn't mean you can roam around. Well, he knew, because my father had a good friend, a postman, and they had a very good rapport, so he knew where he can go into hiding. But I remember waving, and once the truck was gone, and I was just standing there. This is when I cried so uncontrollably, because this is when I found out for the first time that I'm all on my own. It was hell. I knew that I'm going to have to manage. And this was maybe a month after we arrived in that camp. Then you still had September and October, worked very hard, but taking it day by day.
Now your father nearly made it, didn't he?
Yes, he was in hiding, and at the postman, who kept him in the basement, and every night at midnight, my father would go out for a little walk. And what did he do all day? He was sewing. He was a tailor, so the postman would go over to our house and take out the sewing machine and bring it over to his own home. And this is what my father was doing all day long. And he became a heavy smoker. He never smoked before in his life. Now all that I found out from the postman after the war. So at midnight he had to go out for about 5-10 minutes for the little fresh air. And somebody must have been watching him exactly at midnight every day, every night. A neighbor must have seen him going out and coming back 10-15 minutes later. So they contacted the Gestapo. And this was 1944, I think about 2 months or 3 months before Belgium was liberated. And when the Gestapo stopped him, I found out afterwards that he got so panicky when they asked him for his papers. He showed his own, where it shows that he's a Jew, and the false paper. He took them both out and showed it to them. So they took him away, sent him to Malines, and of course from Malines, nobody came back from Malines, because from Malines it was straight to Auschwitz.
Let's go back to September 42, Dieppe.
September 42.
You heard the bombing?
Oh God, did we hear the bomb? That's why I packed. I was ready to go home. I figured any minute now, I'll be going home. Planning already my next life, because I felt that if they'd start a what's the word again? Invasion. How long will it take to get into Belgium or France? But of course, we didn't know that the Germans were ready. They knew all about this invasion.
So how long have you been there up to this
3
point?
months. By that time was about, this was April, this was August. until October.
October. Okay,
October
which how many
42.
months had you been?
3 months.
3
in
months.
France, yeah.
So you figured 3 months of your life had been taken, but
The
if
last
this is the
ways,
worst.
I worked hard, I was always hungry, lice was crawling all over me, but I'll manage.
And so you packed your suitcase one more time?
One more, no, because 3 months later, one morning, we woke up, usually 4 o'clock, we did not have to go to work. And I looked out the window, and I don't see anymore the German Wehrmacht. This is for the first time I saw the SS. With the death's head, what do you call it? Death's head on the cap, and with dogs beside them, and looking very, very angry. So we knew this is not the same soldier that we had yesterday. And that's when we were told that we are all going to be resettled and we are all going home. What they meant home is 90% of the people were from Poland. So this would be...
So you thought you were going to Belgium?
Yes! So we were given a loaf of bread, all of us. The Wehrmacht was gone, the SS took over, and the orders was not anymore please, because the soldiers were pleasant, but with the SS it was barking orders. Out by 8 o'clock, in the train by 9 o'clock. So we knew it's not the same thing. But the biggest shock, when the train left Dannes-Camiers, train left slowly, the big shock, just thinking about during the shivers. The train arrived in Malines. And I remember what I said about Malines? Oh my God, this is exactly what we were trying to escape Malines, not to go to Malines, because from Malines it's Poland. Malines. And I looked out the window and they attached a train with women and children and old people. Then I knew. Mind you, I've never heard of the name Auschwitz, but then I knew that we are in for some horrendous experiences.
And how long was this train ride to be?
4 days.
4
We
days.
were given a loaf of bread, a little bit of jam, and I remember we left the Yom Kippur in 1942. 4 days later, we arrived at Chemin, which is Auschwitz, 4 o'clock in the morning.
4 days on a train with one loaf of bread.
It was horrendous. Also in passenger trains, but we were packed in like sardines. And within a day my loaf of bread was gone. 3 days we starved. And then we finally arrived 4 o'clock in the morning, and as I mentioned before, each time we were transferred from one camp to another camp, we always arrived 4 o'clock in the morning. And this was planned that way. You're tired, you're hungry, you're depressed, you're sleepy. And that's when I looked out the window and I saw prisoners in pajamas running back and forth. And another group of SS standing with dogs. These dogs were trained just to jump. They held on to these dogs so hard. These dogs were trained. If you let the dogs loose, fly. I've never seen the dog run. They all flew. They flew in the air straight to people's necks. But this was this is what we found out afterwards. But the minute the train stopped and the doors opened, rouse, out. And when they meant out, they meant within a minute. Some people started to take their suitcases. Nothing goes with you. Everything stays. And people started to cry, women with children in their arms. And I looked around me and said, where am I here? And other prisoners coming up to us who were there already. If they ask you what you do, tell them you're a mason, you're a bricklayer. Don't tell them you're a lawyer, or tell them you're a businessman. Don't tell them that. If they ask.
Did they ask?
Yes, afterwards we found out, once we went through the inspection, the selection.
Did they ask you?
No, because
No.
I was only, they knew 17, what,
Okay.
he's just going to work hard. So we get off the train, but some of them did not jump off fast enough. And that's when the SS let the dogs loose. Straight to the people's necks. Blood flowing, bleeding from their ears, from their mouth. A bloodbath. My God, this was within the first half hour. So we knew they meant business. Get off the train as fast as you could.
Up until that time, how much death had you seen?
How much?
How much death had you seen?
This is the first time.
This was it. Nobody. So in your camps, nobody passed away.
In France?
Yes.
Yes, there was a couple of people who died, but they were buried. There was a funeral.
Right.
Outside the camp, they had a little Jewish cemetery. I don't know if it was Jewish cemetery, but it was a little cemetery. And they died maybe not from old age, but from working hard, or maybe some beatings, but 1, 2, at the most, a half a dozen within 3 months.
So within half an hour of being.
This is the first time I saw something like that. I was petrified.
Now, there were lines that got formed after you got outside,
After we
correct?
got off after we got off the trains, we were grouped together, and the first orders, women and children on the left. Anybody over 50 on the left. So they did go left. We left Marlene, about 1,700 people, and I would say about 700 went left. Well, somehow they felt it's not enough. Anybody who wants to join their wives can go on the left also. So some husbands ran over.
You say some, wouldn't most?
Well, some of them, not all of them. They thought that maybe wherever they are going, they'll meet their wives later. Because the question was, where are all these people going? Well, they don't have to walk to the camp. They'll be taken by trucks. Women and children, we figure that makes sense. It's a walk, so they'll take them by a truck. So, and then all these people on the left, and then the rest of us had to line up 5 abreast. And this is when we went through the selection. And if I remember correctly, I still don't know today if it was Mengele or not. But with, you must have heard the story before, with the flick of his finger, he decides, we didn't know at the time, who's to live and who's to die. Just with the flick, left, right, left, right. As we advanced, you heard the story how many times already? As we advanced, 5 abreast, I was standing in the middle, 2 on the left, 2 on the right, and we, at one time, the whole 5 of them had to go on the left. Then it was our turn, he looked us over, the 2 on my left on the left, me on the right, the 2 on the right on the left. Did I know right there and then that I was given another lease on life? That's your word, I'll never forget that. So, that's when they marched us into the camp. We never saw these people again. But as we entered the camp, and I saw that big, famous sign, Arbeit macht frei. And as I walked into it and I looked at that, I said, God forbid if Germany wins the war, I'll never come out from this place. That's my very first impression.
When were you aware, David, about the chimneys and what was going on?
It didn't take long, because once we entered the camp, we had to get completely undressed, and I could smell a very sickening, bittersweet smell. I said, my God, something is burning. And but he had other things on your mind. But I knew that my stomach couldn't take it. It was heaving, and I started to vomit. And then I noticed other prisoners vomiting because of the smell. So as we had to get completely undressed inside the camp, this was October 1942. Let me tell you right now that the climate in Poland is not much milder than right here in Ottawa. 20 to 25 below, 30 below zero is not unusual. I'm completely nude, standing there for at least an hour, because we are going to be taken into the showers. And prisoners are in the showers, and after about a good half hour under the water, and they assessed it with the dogs again, make sure that nobody does not move from the sprinklers, because that's when they let the dogs loose. And sure enough, at least one or two was bitten to death, because they walked away, the water was ice cold. I think one man had a heart attack, if I remember correctly. But after that, when we had to run all the way to the other end of the camp, in the nude, soaking wet, that's when we were sent to the barbers. And we were shaved, not only your head or under your arms, your pubic hair, all over. That's when I had a chance to talk to one of the barbers. What's that smell? I'm sick as a dog. What's that smell? That's when he pointed to the chimneys. I said, what is it? Is that, are you ready for that? Are these the kitchens? I thought it was the kitchen facilities. After all, Auschwitz had 25,000 prisoners. He says, no, all these people that came with you went to the gas chamber, and right after they're being gassed, they're being burned. What do you mean burned? That's all the people that came on your transport. That's them. Couldn't believe it.
When did you think, it's a horrible question to ask you, but I gotta ask it. When did you realize that your sisters and your mother had the same outcome?
Well, in that case, I have to jump ahead a little. I was in Auschwitz already about 2 months, 3 months. And I was, every Sunday we didn't have to work, so I was wandering along the camp, looking into the gutters if I can find a raw potato or a piece of cabbage or a turnip, anything to eat. But by then all we talked about is food. We were so starved and skinnier by the day. And as I was walking along, I see somebody walking towards me. Now I recognized him right away. His name was Lipschitz. And I looked at him and he looked at me. I said, you're Lipschitz. You lived such a street, my street. In the same street. He says, didn't your father have a bakery down at the such a street, at the corner where we live? He says, yes. I said, my God, how did you get here? So before he answered the question, he says, who are you? He didn't recognize me, because I was there already a couple of months, so I must have looked horrendous. And I told him who I am. And he burst out crying. And I started to cry. And I walked over to him and I hugged him and I kissed him. I said, I don't remember his first name. I said, we'll make it, we'll stick together, we'll be friends, we'll make it, we'll survive. He kept crying harder than ever. Says, David says, I have some very, very bad news for you. So, by the way, when did you arrive? He says, yesterday. He says, so what do you want to tell me? He says, your mother and your 2 sisters were on our train. That's when I knew. Because overnight in this camp, you age 50 years. Overnight. That's when I knew that my mother and my 2 sisters. After all, this has happened every transport. As a matter of fact, some transports, when the camp was at full capacity, the whole transport went to the gas chamber. They didn't even bother selecting the healthy ones. There was just no room. Trains kept coming from all over Europe. Transport by the thousands. And these ovens These chimneys were belching 24 hours a day. And that's because the question was, when did I find out about my mother and my two sisters? At that time.
$72585.
725. You've seen this number?
I've never seen it, but I read it, so show me where it is. Sure. When did you get that number?
When did I get that number? The same first day. After the showers, the barbers, then we had to line up and be tattooed. And this is the first question when I asked somebody, as a matter of fact, the person who did tattoo my arm, I said, what does that mean? He says, you're the 72,585th prisoner. I said, well, how many people are in this camp? He says, 25,000. I said, well, where are they, the rest of them? He pointed to the chimneys. So I knew. Oh, did I find out. That's when I knew that only a miracle. Only a miracle. There's one little footnote here. As we had to get completely undressed, after the showers, and we were given, after the showers, the barbers, and what's so humiliating, because they knew these people are all from Belgium, and they didn't know how many people are from Antwerp, and Antwerp being a diamond center, even today it's the biggest diamond center in the world. So they felt that who knows how many Jewish people are trying to smuggle in diamonds into the camp. So you know that what they made us do? It's a little bit embarrassing. They made us bend over, and they were shining into your rectum with flashlights to see if you're hiding diamonds. After that, as we had to line up, a fellow beside me, a Rommel, I looked at him and I said, you forgot to take off your shoes because they give you wooden clogs. He says, well, my mother bought them for me a couple of weeks ago. They're new shoes. I said, you better make sure that he doesn't see them. Well, they're new shoes. The SS walks by. He pointed. Didn't say a word. Pointed. A Rommel does not take off his shoes. He just stands there. Says, you didn't hand in your shoes. And innocently he says, well, my mother bought them for me a couple of weeks ago. So your mother bought them for you a couple of weeks ago, huh? Straight between the eyes. Blood splattering all over me. He looks at the other prisoner on Rommel's left, says, now you take off his shoes. And he kept on walking. And this was maybe an hour, maybe at the most 2 hours since I arrived.
How long were you in Auschwitz before you ended up at the Warsaw Ghetto? How long?
I was in Auschwitz. I see you have it all. I was in Auschwitz from October 42 to August 43.
Oh my goodness. This is an impossible thing for you to answer, but give me an average day in Auschwitz. I mean,
An average day.
think of a day or what typically happened.
Wake up call 4 o'clock.
Mhm.
Quarter after 4 you had to line up outside for roll call to make sure that nobody escaped during the night. Quite a few prisoners died overnight, so we had to carry them down and line them up like sardines. So when the commandant came to do his counting, counted all us and then the dead ones, Then we had to go to work. We worked till about 6 in the evening. Very, very hard work. Carrying railroad tracks without gloves. I remember once I was touching the iron railroad. It was in the winter and I just couldn't move my hands because they got stuck. When the SS was walking by, I just pulled my hand away and of course my fingers started to bleed right away. Carrying heavy stones. Other prisoners would take the same stones and bring them back. We came back from work about 5, 6. Another roll call. But the evening roll calls lasted a lot longer. 2, 3, 4 hours. We were just waiting for the roll call to finish so we can go to our bunks and get our ration of bread with a little bit of soup. Well, this is once where the roll call lasted the whole night. The rumors were that a prisoner escaped and nobody moves until we find him. So we stood 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. I think this was maybe December 1942, maybe January 42. It was bitterly cold and it started to snow. And we stood and we stood. And as everybody knows, Auschwitz was circled around in electrical wires. So all of a sudden somebody in our group, in our block, ran off and he runs towards the electric wires. I said, that man is stupid, he's going to kill himself. And that's exactly what he did. The minute he hung, the minute he grabbed the electric wires, blood came down his hands. His face all of a sudden turned white, his eyes bulging out of his socket. And then all of a sudden I said to myself, he's not suffering anymore. That's all it takes is a minute. No pain, no hunger, no cold. And then a few other prisoners started to do the same thing. I said, my God, that's it. I'm not going to make it. Somehow, maybe I was a coward, I don't know. I just couldn't do it.
Did you think about it often? Did you think about it often?
Often, often. This is that one time where it lasted the whole night. When I saw these people running, and then when I felt that all of a sudden no cold and no hunger and nothing all of a sudden, I said, these people are better off than I am. So I don't know. I said, I just didn't have, maybe I was a coward, I don't know. Even today I still think about it. So this was our daily things. Well, another thing I can add is because when they gave us our ration, I was given 2.5 slices of bread, and I thought, well, every 24 hours is not, I just can't do it for 24 hours. I'll have one slice now, and I'll save my other slice for tomorrow morning. And I put my slice of bread in my pants, and of course you never took off your shoes, so you slept with your clothes on because you didn't have pajamas. When I woke up in the morning, somebody had stolen my slice of bread.
And this was the first time this had happened?
Then I decided I'm not going to save anything for the next morning. I'll eat what you got right there and then. So when somebody had stolen my slice of bread, I cried so hard. I felt so sorry for myself.
So I guess
you slept with all your clothes on because if you take off your shoes, somebody will steal your shoes. You slept exactly with everything you had on.
You know, you hear the saying, You live for one day at a time. What did that mean to you in Auschwitz?
What it meant to me is if I woke up in the morning, I don't know if I should be happy that I made it, or maybe it's a miracle that I did make it. Then you got over the initial shock, said, well, maybe the day will be a little bit better. What make it better is because we slept 3 in a bunk, you would feel the body beside you, because some of them died during the night. So the minute he was ice cold, you knew he was dead.
And how often did you?
Weekend?
How often did that happen to you? Often?
Well, it was at least 20, 25 every day, every morning. And they would feel me if I'm ice cold, because the minute somebody's ice cold, you know he's dead. I would go into his pockets and see anything that he had, a piece of bread, like anything. Somebody else would run for his shoes, somebody else would run for his shirt. Within 1 minute, the body was completely naked.
Was there any camaraderie at all within the bunk? I mean, it seems like it was, you know, the battle to survive, and it was an individual battle.
Yes and no. I would say 90% no, 10% yes. Everybody, this is the way I felt. I didn't want to die. I have to look after myself. Stealing from somebody else. An example. You were given 2 cigarettes a month. I don't know if it was with straw or whatever they put in it. 2 a month. And every Sunday afternoon we would go to the main square and start bartering with other prisoners. What do you give me for the 2 cigarettes? One say, I'll give you a slice of bread, I'll give you a belt, I'll give you a pair of socks. Anything to barter with. And I just stood there and somebody comes up to me. How many times did you hear that already? And he says, what do you want for these 2 cigarettes? And I looked at him, he was sitting there with just 2 slices of bread. I said, 1 ration of bread. He says, both? Both slices? I said, yes. So he looked at me, looked at the cigarette. Will you take 1 slice? So I have 1 slice? I said, no. Can I take a bite out of 1 piece of bread and I'll give it to you? I said, no. It meant something to him. He gave me the 2 slices of bread, I gave him the 2 cigarettes. And 2 days later I found out he was dead. And at the beginning I took it hard, but the day after it didn't bother me. But after the war, it bothered me a lot when I survived. I felt personally responsible for that man to die. So was there a camaraderie? I don't think so. I've seen fathers and sons fighting over a piece of bread. Maybe there were other fathers and sons who didn't fight. Or 2 brothers maybe not fighting. But you have no idea what hunger does to you.
When you got to the bunks at night, what did you talk about?
Not too much. I plumped myself on my, because don't forget there was 3 of us lying on the old-fashioned bunks. I just lie there like dead rolled over. Or somebody would make conversation, what happened during the day. But most of the time, well, I did not make conversation. I just lie there. I have a better word for it. I was a zombie. I lived in, or if you call it living, I was a zombie.
1944 was your first death march.
Oh, yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
About the death march. First, First of all, I realized that thirst is worse than hunger. I don't know if I discussed that. Did I mention that?
Not really.
That from hunger you suffer, your stomach shrinks, you're always in pain, you always dream about food, but you die very, very slowly. From thirst, you go mad. It must affect your brain because people start screaming and yelling, and I can't find the word to describe suffering from thirst. This is the first impression I had on that march from Warsaw to Kutno. Originally the plan was to walk a lot further, but because 4,400 prisoners, maybe 4,500, leaving Warsaw, August 1944, the heat was unbearable. And we knew that the Russians were at the front. We knew that the Russians, any day now, they'll enter Warsaw. And when the first rule came out that anybody who can't walk will stay behind. Well, of course, I knew what that meant. And so even people who could hardly walk made up their mind that even if they have to crawl, they're not going to stay behind. Because it was well known that nobody's going to stay alive and be liberated by the Russians, and these people have a story to tell. So sure enough, the minute we left Warsaw, we could hear the machine guns, so we knew that 100, maybe 200 prisoners who stayed were killed. So we left Warsaw, 42, maybe, I don't remember, between 4,000 and 4,500 people. 10 abreast, leaving the city of Warsaw. We left, of course, very, very early in the morning, and we walked and walked, and then occasionally I would hear machine guns. At times I would hear somebody shooting off a rifle, but I was just too scared, too tired, too depressed, too thirsty, and this was only the first day, that I didn't even bother looking behind until I found out that anybody who did not walk fast enough was shot right there and then. We walked the whole day. I don't know if we walked 10 miles or 10 kilometers. We walked the whole day until the evening. This was the first day. We were stopped in a big open field. And first
during that first day, what was on your mind? What were you thinking about?
Just no, it's a very good question. I was a zombie. I didn't know. I just did what I was told to do. You walk, and I walked, and I always looked at the person in the front of me that I don't stick to, that I don't stay too far behind him. As he made a step, I made a step, and it was. I can't find a better word than to describe zombie.
Did anybody see you while you were walking?
Oh yes, we did see Polish people at the beginning coming out from their houses, from their farms, and just shaking their head, but nobody did anything until, I don't know, it was the second or the third day, when some Polish people did come out with water, with pails of water. But they were afraid to bring it to us, and the prisoners were just too afraid to run over to this lady. But I made a decision that no matter what, they might as well shoot me in the back, but I am going, if anybody comes out with water and just stands there in the front of a house, they can kill me, but I'm going to run towards the water. And sure enough, somebody came out with a pail of water, and I said, this is it. I just ran towards her, splashed myself, I could hear yelling and screaming, and got some water on my face, and then ran back with the group. And it was a miracle. Nobody noticed it, because I know the SS themselves were exhausted. And this went day after day after day. It was a horrendous experience because I know we walked for at least a week. But after the third and the fourth day, something very, very unusual happened. We were dropped off in a field, of course the SS always on both sides with the machine guns ready to shoot. And anybody, as I mentioned a minute ago, who stood behind or couldn't walk or fell over was shot, and they didn't even bother lifting the bodies. They didn't even ask us to carry these bodies, they just left them there. We came to an open field. And as I was just lying there, crying, I saw some of the other prisoners digging holes in the ground by hand, with a spoon, just digging. And I asked in Yiddish, always in Yiddish, what's going on? Well, if you dig deep enough, you'll come to water. You'll come to water, maybe not water, but at least some dampness. That's all I had to hear. And digging and digging and digging, and sure enough, we came to something wet. And we would, well, not splash it because there was no water, it was just wet or dampness, whatever it was, against our lips. I never realized until the next morning when we left this field and I looked behind me, hundreds and hundreds of holes, which means that nobody slept. Everybody was digging holes to come to some dampness. Horrendous. This is when I realized that thirst is, I can't find the word to describe the agony.
So this was just pointless marching?
Marching and no food. No food. But all of a sudden food didn't mean too much to us. It was the thirst. I never realized it because the minute I heard somebody yelling and screaming, the SS came up to him right there and then shot him in the head. And that's when I realized this is from madness.
How long did this go on for? How long did
For
this march?
1 week.
1 week.
Until we arrived, and I think the original plan was for us to walk a lot further. You must have heard that story already umpteen times. Until we came to a town by the name of Kutno. We arrived in Kutno, and the day before we arrived in Kutno, somehow, I don't know if the commandant felt sorry for us or if it was a trick, we'll never know. But he says it's not going fast enough. And he knows that we're all very, very thirsty, which is putting it mildly. We are coming to a lake. And he'll give us permission to go into the water. And then will be, once we get back to dry land, it will be possible that we can walk a little faster because he has a set of orders, and that's how much we have to walk a day. When we heard the word lake, and sure enough we didn't even believe him until we came to a lake. And we see the water, and before he lets anybody go, he says, I'm making a rule. 100 prisoners each time can go into the water. When they come back, the next 100. And if we do it this way, everybody will be in the water. The minute we saw the water, pandemonium. Like a stampede, 4,000 people running down a hill towards the water. All I could see is the water. But I did have enough brain to look behind me, and I saw the SS setting up machine guns. And I said, well, I'll worry about that later. Right now it's the water. And I ran further and further until I came into the water. And before I even knew it, the water was up to my eyeballs. And splashing and drinking and splashing, and it's horrendous sight. But after a couple of handfuls of water and slurping, all of a sudden I see my hands wet. And I lick it, I said, well, that's not water anymore, it looks like blood. And I turned around behind me and I hear the machine guns. And then I take a look in the water and I see about 20, maybe 30 people floating on the water. I said, oh my God, they mean business. They are actually shooting the prisoners. Of course, I ran back so fast, but I did see, by then, maybe close to 50 people lying in the water, floating in the water, and then I knew that, we still don't know today if it was a trick to make the group smaller, or maybe he had good intentions, we'll never know. But then they found out that things are just not going fast enough, and they're going to put us on cattle trains deeper into Germany. And we had to stay overnight in another field. The next morning, very, very early, we saw cattle trains.
Where was this?
In Kutno.
In Kutno, okay.
This was the next day. We walked after we got out of water, soaking wet, but we walked until we came to the next little town, and I never knew until I saw the sign Kutno. I had no idea where Kutno is. All I remember seeing Kutno. And they put us 100 prisoners in one compartment. No, not a compartment.
Yes.
Car. Yeah, one
Cattle car.
cattle car. 100 freight car. 100 prisoners, which was definitely not comfy. Because not only did he get 100 in the cattle cars, we had to keep the doors free, which means 50 on each side, and we were standing there squeezed together, like.
And when was
Like
this now?
sardines.
What month and what year are we in?
This was 44,
Okay.
August 44.
August 44 still. Okay.
Yeah, still 44. And we, so far we are squeezed together like sardines, the doors wide open, the doors free, and then the shock when they closed the doors and everything all of a sudden became pitch black. The moaning, the screaming, the crying, the praying. I can't find the words to describe it.
Now at this time,
This
you
was
didn't realize it, but you had another 9 months until you were going to get liberated.
True.
Had you realized there was another 9 months, do you think you
Oh,
could have made
no,
it at
of
that
course
time?
we didn't know. We didn't know. All I knew is, and as I don't know if I mentioned it the last time, not only did I live day by day, at this time I lived hour by hour. Once we were in this cattle train, I wish I would be standing closer to the wall, touch a iron or a metal or something and just keep licking it, which would moisten my lips. I was right in the middle. Once the door was locked, heavy locks, I still remember the sound. No facilities, no, as I mentioned, no toilets. Everything was done standing up.
How long did this train ride go on for?
5 days. No water. And then, some of them, of course, I didn't know at the time, died from heart attacks or from thirst. I don't know how they died. But they couldn't fall over. They just died standing. And you couldn't even take a chance to sit down or lie down, or you'd be trampled to death. And this went on for 5 days until we arrived in Dachau. The minute we arrived in Dachau, also, this is important, we always arrive 4 o'clock in the morning.
I remember you saying that last time.
I mentioned it, but always 4 o'clock in the morning. It was planned that way. The minute the doors opened, the SS with the dogs, everybody rouse. And this is for the first time I realized from about 160, maybe 65 people managed to jump off. And I took a look behind me, and this is for once, this is the first time I noticed that the prisoners who had died could finally fall over. And the stench, I never realized how terrible it stank until they opened the doors and we got off. Oh my God, this alone could have killed people. I just couldn't believe the stench and the excrement all over.
Now, if you were, I'm trying to imagine this, you're standing in the middle of the train and there had to be probably 3 or 4 people at least around you standing right up,
yes.
looking, right touching you.
Yes, like sardines.
You had no idea if any of those died around you?
No, you just stood there, your head going backwards and forwards, and some of them just died standing up. And as a matter of fact, I know for a fact that some of them died, and I didn't realize it because their eyes were wide open.
So during the day now, as you travel during the day, you can start seeing each other.
Very hard because the
You're
doors
so
were
packed,
locked.
yeah.
The doors were locked, it was always pitch black. The only light that we could see is from the slats, from the side of the train, a slight little light from outside.
Was there any conversation?
No. Mumbling, constantly crying and praying, and how many times you could hear them saying Kaddish. It was... We just stood there, waiting to die. That's the only word I can find. Waiting to die, because we had no idea that it's going to take that long.
And you end up in Dachau.
And we arrived in Dachau.
Now you were in Dachau for how long?
Well, this was August 44 until I was liberated April.
So
29.
describe for me Dachau for 9 months.
Dachau, 9 months. Good question. We, after train, and even the SS, if I remember correctly, felt sorry for us. These were not the SS that guarded us all along. These are the SS in Dachau, who when they saw these people jumping off, crawling out from the trains, it must have scared them half to death. The impression I have, they backed up. Yeah, backed up. They never saw something like that. So I'll jump ahead a couple of days. We were in quarantine in Dachau for about a week. Then it was decided that they are going to send us to sub-camps all around Dachau. There were about a dozen sub-camps by the name of Mühldorf, Kaufering, Landsberg, all different camps. And they were all within 10-15 kilometers from Dachau. And it was decided that I think 1,000 prisoners will go to one of the sub-camps, and this would be on trains until we arrived in one of these camps.
You went to Landsberg, right?
Yes, this was the Landsberg, yes. As a matter of fact, I was in Kaufering, and I was there for about 2-3 days, and from there to Landsberg. Landsberg, of course, is very well known because this is where Hitler was in jail. Now, when we arrived in this camp in Landsberg, all we saw was little roofs. And I thought that this is where they're growing fruits and vegetables. What do you call it when in the winter when you grow things?
Like in a greenhouse.
Greenhouses. Until we found out that this is where we would be living. There was just a roof, and we had to walk down about 5-6 stairs, wooden stairs, and it was no individual bunks, just one long bunk and on each side 60 prisoners, lying one beside the other. And I looked at the ground, it was mud. So walking down these few stairs, all of a sudden, mud was up to my ankles. And 60 on one side, 60 on the other side. So each time we walked in and out, it was always in the mud. We slept underground.
Now, we got to take a step back because, you know, you're telling this as an elderly gentleman right now, but you were
Yes.
17 years old at the time.
1944, I was already 19.
19, okay. You're 19 years old.
I was getting older even
Yeah.
in captivity.
And so
What's the question?
your job, you end up laying steel rails, cleaning snow.
Landing steel, yes. Rails, different jobs. Rails, and then we worked underground factories. And I'll mention one thing about these underground factories that they were building. We woke up every morning at 4, appel, which is a roll call, given our daily ration, and then we left for work. The walk, I don't remember now how far, until we found out that we are coming close to an underground factory. And my job was to lift bags of cement that 2 prisoners would put on my neck, and I would have to walk, I don't know how long, how far, and then I have to go up a set of a ladder, and then somebody else would take these things off my back. When they put these 2 sacks on my back, when they put a sack, the 2 prisoners, a sack on my back, all of a sudden I felt my whole body shrinking. I said, my God, I thought, I just can't do it. But when I saw the SS on each side, somehow I managed to walk very, very slowly, but I managed to get to the ladder. But I just couldn't get up. I just could not go on the ladder where somebody would take the sack off my back. I just couldn't. And the SS says, okay, rauf, in other words, up the ladder. I just couldn't lift a foot.
David, I want to read you
And
something.
somehow he did not bother me. He gave me a little push with his rifle, and then somebody else took the sack off my back. I just couldn't, even if he would have shot me right there and then, I could not lift my foot just to climb up the stairs.
So you seem to have experienced a lot of these miracles.
I can't find another word than miracle.
Because you had the situation where people were getting shot around you
A
in the
miracle.
lake. You had the situation where people were dying around you in the train, and now this.
Let me tell you something about miracles. The commandant, one day, he's looking for 100 volunteers, and he looks you straight in the eye. And when he looks at you straight in the eye, you volunteer, even if you don't want to volunteer. And he's just 100 volunteers. And the way he looked at me, I said, what am I going to do? So I volunteered, I went in the front, and then some other volunteers, and then he picked some by just pointing, and then the rest can go back to their bunks, and there he had 100 prisoners in the front of him. I don't know if I ever told you that story. And we stood there, and we start mumbling because he says he'll be right back. A couple of SS were walking around. Where are we going? Somebody says, well, maybe they're going to send us to another camp where they will feed us better. Maybe some place where we won't have to work so hard. Everybody was thinking positive. And I thought, you know, maybe it will be better. So we stood there for about an hour or 2, and he comes back with 2 assessments. And then he looks at us, and he looks at me, and he looks at another couple of prisoners, and he says, you get back with the rest of them. And I was already planning to stay with the group because we discussed that it can't get worse. Might as well stay with him. So I don't know, at the time I felt bad when you get out, get back into your bunk. So it was about 90, maybe 95, and the half a dozen went back to their bunks. And we were just waiting for the other ones to come back the next day, or maybe the same evening. Where did they go? And what did they do? And was it indeed a better opportunity? Then we found out that these went straight to the gas chambers. They had to reduce, it was not a big camp, only 1,000, maybe 1,200 prisoners. Gas chamber. So, is it a miracle? You want another miracle? Walking, one day, this was already in January, February 45, very, very cold, snowing very, very hard, and an assessment comes into the bunks, and he says 50 prisoners are coming with him. They'll have to go to the train station to shovel snow so the trains can go back and forth. So he did not ask for volunteers. The whole barrack will go to the next town to shovel the snow. And I remember now, we walked to the train station, Landsberg. I can't remember now how long we walked, maybe about an hour. And this is the first time in a long, long time where I saw people walking back and forth in the street. People walking with groceries. I looked into houses where people were with curtains and drapes. We came to the train station, and snow, sure enough, was very, very high. And we were each given a shovel, and we had to start shoveling. And there was about a half a dozen SS there standing, watching that we do our job. As I was shoveling the snow, the SS, because it was very, very cold, would not stand watching us. They'd go inside the train station and look out the window. As I was shoveling snow, I saw a lady going by with that grocery bag.
I was going to ask you this question, so go ahead.
Grocery bag. And I see a loaf of bread sticking out from her back. I was mesmerized. Bread. And as she was walking by, not too close, but not too far either, I ran over to her and I figured, what have I to lose? They can shoot me, but it's an opportunity. And I said to the lady in German, may I have a piece of bread? And she looked at me, she says, are you hungry? These people had no idea. When she said, are you hungry? It just boggled my mind when she didn't understand. I said, yes, very much so. She said, well, I was like, I don't have a knife or anything. I said, well, just break it off like that. So she broke a piece of bread and she says, no, if you want, you can come back tomorrow. I live just across the street and I'll be glad to give you some more bread. I took the piece of bread, shoved it down right away my pant legs, and went back to shoveling snow as if nothing happened. Maybe some of the other prisoners saw me, maybe some of them didn't see me, I don't know. And we walked, shoveled snow all day long. At one time where we had to move rail tracks and I didn't have any gloves, and the SS says you have to move these, about a half a dozen prisoners have to move it a little bit on the side. And I looked at my fingers and I looked at him. I thought he was going to say, well, you don't have to because you don't have any gloves. But when he said, you grab these tracks, these railroad tracks, the minute I touched these railroad tracks, I all of a sudden felt that my fingers were glued to the iron. And as we managed to move the tracks, I couldn't lift my fingers. They were glued from the cold, frozen to the iron. And no matter how hard I tried, it glued. I can't find another word. But when the SS came by, says, well, get back to work, always in German, screaming, yelling. That's when, of course, I moved my fingers, and every finger was bleeding. Every finger. And the pain was very, very painful. I managed to get back into the group, kept licking my fingers because it was so painful. But anyway, I knew I have a piece of bread down my pant leg. I'll be celebrating tonight. I ate all night. A small piece of bread, but I made sure it would last the whole night. I didn't sleep, and I didn't want to eat too loud because I didn't want the other prisoners to hear me. Did somebody ever, some people asked me from different schools, did you give somebody else a piece of bread? Did you divide? How do you say it?
Divide it. Divide it.
Divide or I said no. Well, why? And I looked. I said, because I want to live. I didn't want to die. I want to live.
Now you saw this woman again, though.
The next day, we did some more shoveling. I was the first in line to go on that commando. A miracle, talking about miracles. You've been on that group yesterday, you're going again. So sure enough, I don't know how many prisoners walked again to the next town, because it snowed overnight. And when we came to the train station, I looked at that house. That's all I kept thinking about, that house. And I said, how in the name of the Lord will I be able to make it down across the street? And back then it was very, very cold, and the SS was rubbing his fingers, and I asked him, I have to austreten, which means I have to
Go. Relieve yourself.
relieve myself. He says, go behind that tree. And he went into the train station, and instead of going behind the tree, I ran across the street. And I figured, as long as I don't feel like shotgun in my back, what do I have to lose? I don't think I'll make it. As simple as that. I know I'm not going to survive. Just, that's all I had in mind, just to go across the street. Come across the street and knock at the door, and this lady was waiting for me. And she said, come on in. When I came into her house, her husband was having his breakfast, and she said, this is my husband. And she says to her husband, this is the man I was talking to you about yesterday. He's the one that I gave this piece of bread. He didn't say one word, he just kept on eating. And she had some bread and some jam and some heavy socks. And she says, this is for you. And if you come back again, I'll have some more for you. Right away, everything down my pant leg. And she says, good luck to you. In German. And kommen Sie zurück. I hope you can come back. I ran back to my group. And managed to work the day. Got back to the camp. Back to my bunk, and then again all night chewing my piece of bread. And there, I think this, I wouldn't say it saved my life, but it prolonged my life.
Who did this man turn out to be?
Well, I found out that this man was the mayor of the town. His name was Bauer. They had a son who found out afterwards was killed on the Russian front. And his wife maybe didn't know as much about the concentration camps, just not too far from Landsberg town, but her husband knew. And for him not to call over the SS, I don't know. Maybe he felt sorry for me. All I know is that he just did not say one word.
Let's jump ahead to, let's go say,
We're talking about miracles.
it's a miracle. A month before you were liberated, do you remember a month, a week before, and what was going on at that point in time?
Well, a month, no. But 2 weeks before the liberation. By then already I was in Kaufering. They sent us around to different camps. They were all very close by. And we could hear the shooting, we could hear the bombardment. And we knew that the war is coming to an end. We felt that Germany had lost the war. Because we could see the way the SS behaved. And some of them were more brutal than ever. Until, I think about the week before, maybe no, less than that, I think about 3 or 4 days before the liberation. We knew, by then we knew it's nearly over. Because they stopped feeding us altogether. And this was going on already for about 2 or 3 days, until the liberation, which was another 4 days, which means we did not eat at all, nothing. And I was lying on my bunk, and I knew it was already April, maybe the 20th, maybe the 21st, maybe the 22nd, and I knew that I'm not going to make it. Oh, by then my mind was made up, I'm going to die. I couldn't get up anymore, I couldn't walk anymore, and I would look at other prisoners who were Muslims. Muslims is when you turn out to be skin and bones. And I was lying on my bunk, feeling sorry for myself, and I said, well, I made it so far, but I don't think I'll survive. And I had a little skinny blanket, and I took it off my lap, and I took a look at my legs, 2 sticks like that. Oh my, that's when I felt so sorry for myself. I just could not stop trying. I tried my heart out because I said, I know it won't be much longer. I just don't make it. I just won't make it. Because by then, prisoners ate leaves, grass, straw, mice, rats. And the big shock of my life when I saw prisoners cutting out pieces of flesh from humans who had died and put it on some open fire. The SS did not bother coming into the camp anymore, and we did not have to go to work.
Was the last day?
This was the 27th or the 28th of April. The day before I was liberated.
You're missing hearing in 1 ear as a result.
An assessment came by. You know, to tell the truth, I don't know if it was 2 days before or the day before. An SS walked by, and he sees me lying there, and he says, "Get up." And I just looked at him. I can't. Now when he took out his revolver, and he says, "Get up." On my hands and knees, I managed finally to stand up. And he looked me straight in the eye, and he took his revolver and hit me straight across the neck. Did I mention it the last time? And I fell over, and all of a sudden everything was black. And all of a sudden I didn't hear anything, and I do remember saying to myself, thank God I'm dead. Thank God, because I don't feel any pain, I don't feel any hunger, I don't feel anything. But then slowly, slowly my eyesight came back and my hearing came back, and I managed to get up on my, I don't know how long it took me to get up, and I lie there in my bunk, just waiting to die, until the next morning, the 29th of April. Oh man, I don't hear anything and I don't see anything, and I crawl on my hands and knees up the exit. Don't forget, we slept on the ground, and I see the gate wide open. And I look at the sentry post, no SS. And the front, the gate wide open. Oh my God, I think this is it, I made it. I'm alive. That's when I saw the first American tank going into the camp, and all of a sudden he stops in the middle, and the turret opens, and I see a black American soldier crawling out, but not out, just standing there. He was afraid. He didn't see human beings. He saw
Ghosts?
zombies, animals, just standing there. And I still remember, as it happened yesterday, he threw me a piece of chewing gum. How you doing, young fella? That's all I remember. And this was the day I was liberated. April the 29th, I found out.
And your birthday was?
1945.
And your birthday is?
On my birthday,
On your
April
birthday.
29th. As I mentioned once before, and I mention it every time. And it's only at some school where a student would get up when I told him that I was liberated April the 29th, the day of my birthday. A student comes up, runs up the stage, remember that? Crying her heart out. And grabs me and she says, "This is the day you were born again." I think we'll stop here.
So we're in the second day of Hanukkah now, and maybe it's fitting that we talk about the Holocaust with Hanukkah, because you know there's a saying in the Talmud, it's a story that says when the Messiah comes, there'll only be two holidays that we'll continue to celebrate. One is Hanukkah, which celebrates our defeat, that we were able to continue to live spiritually, because the Assyrian Greeks tried to stop, Jewish traditions like circumcision and Sabbath and the beginning of the new month, and Purim, which was the annihilation of the Jews. And in many ways, the Holocaust is kind of a combination of the two of them. It was a sort of a spiritual,
Yeah, to a certain extent.
right, stopping of the Jews. It was also an annihilation of the people.
Yes, also, yeah, but you see, the way I look at it, being in captivity, if the Germans would have said, if you promise to denounce your Jewishness, you can go free, there'd be a lineup from here to the end of the world for Jewish people to say, I'm not a Jew anymore, just for your freedom. So this is how little Jewishness meant to me at the time. Because the agony, I'm not going to go and say suffering or hunger or pain, just the agony of being in captivity. I can't find words to describe it. That just to be free, or just to say, I don't mind dying, but at least I have enough bread so I won't die of hunger. That's the only thing that went through my mind. Being a Jew did not mean the least to me, but I know the price I paid for being a Jew. But I do remember incidents while in captivity that there were some Jewish people who, and I still don't know how, they knew it was Yom Kippur, they knew it was Rosh Hashanah, and they managed to get a minion, and this is when I cried my heart out.
Did you ever participate in a minion?
Well, he stuck around, but then again, it was a 5-10 minute service, and somebody watching the window, somebody else watching the door, and I just peeked in, and to be honest, I was afraid. All I need is an assessment to come in and shoot them all. So.
But you mentioned you cried at that.
Oh
Why?
God, it meant so much to me, especially when I heard the Kaddish. It just tears your heart out. But except that, I would have paid any price to get out.
Let me read you something. This is written by a woman by the name of Charlotte Delbo, and she wrote this poem.
Hungarian?
She was from, it's a good question, France.
Oh, what's her name?
Charlotte Delbo. And she writes, I've spoken with death, and so I know the futility of things we learn, a discovery I made at the cost of a suffering. So intense, I keep on wondering whether it was worth it.
Très bien.
How do you, looking back on that whole experience, how do you get out of it and say, was there anything that was worth it, and how do you recover, and how did you, if you have recovered, what is it that you can take out of that experience and say, I can add to the world?
That's very profound. In other words, what did I learn? What did it mean to me to have gone through it? Or did I accept what I went through?
You tell me, because I don't know what I mean.
I'll tell you. First of all, 3 years in captivity. If I can find one word, it would be hell. There are no other words. Hell. To go through hell and survive and talk about it. Even today I have to pinch myself. Did I survive? Did I make it? When I talk to schools, it shakes me up even today, although it happened over 60 years ago, when I talk about it as if it happened yesterday. It's so painful. Gehenna. That's hell, isn't it? Gehenna, that's a Hebrew word or a Jewish word. Hell. I can't find... There are no words to describe it.
So what
Being
makes...
dead, warmed over.
What makes... Let me read you something else. This is from Albert Camus, and he says, "There is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Judging whether life is or is not worth living amounts to answering the fundamental question of philosophy." And you know what I derive from that is, something must have been, when somebody considers ending their life, if it were so simple, it would just end if things were so simple. So there must be something in the past that keeps you going. You know, we talked about it before, about survival instinct, but there must be something that kept you going.
Good question, and I think I have the right answer for that. I don't know if I mentioned it to you the last time or the first time about suicide. Did that come up about... I didn't bring it up? Okay. One winter day, I think it was December 42 or January 43. After the morning roll call, which would last about an hour, after a hard day's work, we would come back. The evening roll calls would last about 2 hours. At times 2.5 hours, at times 3 hours. And of course everybody was just waiting to be allowed to go into the barracks, because this is when we get our ration bread. Now this one day, or this one evening, this one night, a parent, which is roll call, went on and on and on, and we knew it was already past midnight. Rumors was going on that somebody is missing, and nobody moves until they find the person. There was talk that maybe somebody died of a heart attack and is buried out there in the snow. We never found out. But this is once where roll call lasted a whole night. Now this is December 42 or January 43, and as I mentioned before, the climate in Poland is not much milder than right here in Ottawa. 20-25 below zero is not unusual. Standing with striped pajamas, bareheaded, wooden clocks, and we stood there, and we stood there. And Auschwitz, of course, was circled around with electric barbed wire. All of a sudden, as we were standing there, I see somebody running towards the wire. And I make a double take. And I thought, that man is crazy. And he ran, and before the sentry post managed to shoot him, he was fast enough to grab the wire and of course immediately electrocuted, because you could see the flames and you could see the blood flowing down his hands, and you could look at his face. All of a sudden he turned as white as the Kleenex and his eyes bulging out of his head. And we knew he's dead. And then all of a sudden somebody else is doing the same thing. And within half an hour, about a half a dozen. And I envied these people. I said, oh my God, if I just have the courage to do the same thing. Within a split second, no suffering, no hunger, no cold, no pain, and it only takes a few seconds. Because by then the guards, the sentry post stopped shooting, because they knew they knew that these people are committing suicide. And just looking at them, I thought, within a minute, all of a sudden, all pain will disappear. Well, maybe I was a coward. I said, no, I just can't do it. So this is for the first time where I saw prisoners, suicides, at least about 20 or 25. And this was just from our bunk, from our barrack. But don't forget, the camp was circled around, so who knows how many did do the same thing from other barracks. But this was a sight that I'll never forget, because just seeing them with their hand on the electric wires and the blood going down their hands, it's a sight that I'll never will I forget. Now this is what I'm talking about, suicide. Now maybe I was a coward, I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it.
I'm going to mention some words. What I'd like you to do is tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. Trains.
Trains or cattle trains?
Let's start with trains.
Well, but see, when we left Belgium, it was on passenger trains.
Mm-hmm. When you go on a train today, does it bother you?
If I would go on a train today, no.
Okay.
But when I do see cattle trains, especially when we're on a holiday and I see cattle trains going through and by the hundreds, I start thinking. Especially when I see these cattle trains locked. And I say to myself, 120 people in one of these compartments. Is that compartments? I just can't accept it, that people could have survived. And sure enough, when we left Kutno on our way to Dachau. 4 or 5 days. Let me go be a little bit more specific. After we walked for about a week, the Russians were getting closer, and they felt that we are not going fast enough, that they'll requisition cattle trains and bring us to Dachau. And when these trains arrived, and we looked at them, we figured, well, 50, 60, 70, 75 people will manage. That's the very first thing you were thinking. You'll be able to lie down, you'll be able to stretch your legs. But when the order came out, 120 people in one compartment, I went numb. 120, and the doors have to be free, which means 60 and 60. A shock that I'll never get over it. And if I thought this is it, then they locked the gates, the doors, and you could hear the heavy locks closing. So we all stood. There was no way to bend over, no way to, you were just resting on the person in the front of you. No facilities, and I meant hygiene, everything standing up.
Tell me about...
And this was for 4 days.
Tell me about what...
So talking about cattle trains,
Mhm.
it comes up each time when I see trains, especially cattle trains. Passenger trains, no. But cattle trains, even if it's 60 years, I do think about that often.
Family. Family.
Family, that's what kept me going. I was a dreamer. No matter what we heard about transports coming from all over Europe constantly, and the camp was always at full capacity, 25,000 prisoners, 28,000. At one time the camp was so tight that when transports came and there was no room for the camp, the whole transport would go straight to the gas chamber. There wouldn't be a selection, there just was no room, the whole transport went to the gas chamber. And so we knew about it. And I knew that within the first couple of weeks when we saw these chimneys burning, what's the word? Spewing flames, we knew that these are people.
You mean belching?
Belching. And the smell, of course, was sickening. So I knew, but I thought, well, maybe, just maybe, somebody in my family made it, hidden, and this is what kept me going. After a while, I just didn't think it is possible, because by then it was going into 1942, 43, 44, we're getting into 1945. By then I was very, very depressed. But to put it to you bluntly, I didn't want to die. I wanted to live. By then I knew I lost my family. But then I'm the one who will revive the family. And that's the only thing that went through my mind, because at the end I knew that nobody made it. But what's so funny, that when I did come home after the war, and I came to my hometown, and I ran all the way from the train station. I lived only about 5 minutes from the train station. And I ran so fast to my house, I still thought a miracle. Maybe, just maybe, if not my father, if not my mother, maybe one of my 2 sisters would open the door. I was so naive, or maybe I was dreaming, or maybe I just didn't want to accept reality. But when a stranger opened the door, then I knew right there and then that I'm the only one. what family meant to me just went out the window. I figured I have to start from scratch because I don't have anybody.
Revenge.
With a passion. As a matter of fact, and I shouldn't say that, not too long ago, about a year ago, I was invited to talk to a school with Truda Rosenberg. Maybe you know her.
Yes,
She invited me to come with her. I don't remember which school it was.
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, yes, on Broadview Avenue. And we talked, and often I get the same question: do you hate the Germans? I said, with a passion. And Truda turns around and she said, Dave, you can't say that. They were not all bad. Some of them were more decent than others. And after giving it some very serious consideration, I remember what Elie Wiesel said once in his book Night. When they asked him, do you hate the Germans? He says, only the ones who did me harm. Just give me the shivers thinking about it. And that's what I say. But revenge, what the Germans did to us, the suffering, I can't ever forgive and forget.
Evil.
Evil? What do you mean by evil?
What do you mean by evil? What do you mean by evil?
By evil is meanness, to be an evil person. The first time I knew how evil human beings can be, when I saw the first SS. When I was in France, I did mention that I was in the labor camp in France. We were guarded by the Wehrmacht, by the soldiers. To them it was just a job, and they couldn't have cared less what we do. As long as we stayed within the compound, when we went to war, they guarded us. But it's only when we arrived in Auschwitz, just saying the name, you get cold flushes. 4 o'clock in the morning, and I looked out the window. And this, by the way, was a passenger train. That's how they fooled us. And I saw the SS with their dogs. To them, seeing people bleeding to death, to them this is exactly what they wanted. Because when they let these dogs loose, and they were laughing, and they were enjoying themselves, I couldn't believe how evil these SS were. And then I found out not much later that the SS were volunteers. They were not picked to guard the concentration camps. They volunteered because they were evil. It's a mild word. There should be another word instead of evil. I can't find the right word right now, but evil is too soft a word.
There's a question that always comes up with philosophers, and it's one that maybe is derived from the philosopher Nietzsche. He said, paraphrased to say, in around 1900, God is dead. I should tell you that I saw something in a bathroom once. It said, God is dead, Nietzsche, and then underneath it said, Nietzsche is dead, God. So I ask you, where was God to you during the Holocaust?
Well, while in captivity, I did not believe in God. As, of course, it's already cliche, where was God when 6 million people were, Jewish people were slaughtered, plus millions of others? But I remember reading a book, I can't remember who wrote it. And the question came up, how could God, what did God do when he saw the murder, the killings of millions and millions of Jews? And then the next line says, what did God do? God cried.
And that's as far as I can go about God.
If you could sum up Auschwitz in a couple of words, what would you say? If somebody said to you,
Hell?
we're back to hell.
Is there a word more specific than hell? Worse than hell? I wish I could find a word. Is there a word worse than hell? You tell me. Because that's what it was. An inferno. When we arrived in Auschwitz, October 1942, 4 o'clock in the morning. Just looking out the windows, small little windows, and I see the SS running back and forth with the dogs, holding on to these dogs for dear life, because these dogs were trained. Let them loose, they just fly. I've never seen these dogs running. They flew in the air, straight to people's necks. The screaming, the crying, the moaning. People half on the tracks, half on the train. The shooting non-stop with machine guns. My God, this is hell. This is hell. And the barking of the orders, jump, after trains, and nothing comes with you. All the baggage stays on the train. And this is within half an hour. I said, my God, where am I? Where am I? But one thing though I'd like to add, and I know I mentioned it. As we entered the camp, I'll never forget as long as I live, and the big sign, Arbeit macht frei. I remember tears rolling down my eyes. God forbid if Germany wins the war. This is the end of me. And this was just within the hour. I don't know, hell, inferno. I can't find another word for it. But there should be a stronger word than hell, or even inferno. And then going through this for 3 years, then maybe there is a God.
One of the reasons you're even talking to me is, you told me, was that, and not specifically me, but why you started talking about this, was the deniers. What do you say, right now there's a conference taking place in Iran with Holocaust deniers. What's your message to those people who would even consider to believe what the deniers are saying?
Oh my God, that would, this is one of the main reasons I talk to schools. I would not have gotten involved. It's only when the Holocaust never happened, or it's exaggerated, or it wasn't as bad as they say it is, or somebody coming up to me, and this is what hurts the most. And I think this was the son of the German ambassador, who told me, this was at Rockcliffe, at Ashbury College, that his father told him, that somebody told his father, that Jewish people would put numbers on their arm so they can collect a pension from the German government. I said, I'm not going to take a moment to answer that question. But when they do ask, was it really as bad as it was? I said, you're right, it was 100% worse. Even today, when I talk about it, or when I go to school, I keep thinking, how did I survive? And then I come up with little incidents. When I got the job in the tailor shop in the winter 42, 43, I am 100% sure if I would have to be working outdoors, I would not have survived. Then I remember a German lady once giving me a piece of bread. Maybe that's why I survived. And I come up with little ideas. I don't know. I just don't know. After all, let's face it, 6 million didn't make it. 6 million didn't make it. And I made it. I don't know. A miracle? Somebody watching over me? I just don't know. It just boggles the mind.
So let me ask you the culminating question. If you live another 40 some odd years and you're the last survivor who witnessed what happened.
Oh, you mean from who survived the concentration camp?
Surviving Auschwitz and the concentration
And
camp.
if I would be the last one still alive?
What would be your message?
Well, my message is already out even before. Because our Rabbi Garten from Temple Israel, I spoke to Mitchell Bellman and some other learned people. I said, as long as I have the energy, as long as I have the capacity, I won't stop talking about the Holocaust. Because this is something that, as the rabbi said, David says, you're living history. And if you won't do it, who will? So what I'm doing now, and I'll do exactly the same thing if I'm one of the last few who survived, make sure that they remember the price that we paid. And I always have a footnote when I talk to schools. And the only reason I went through all this, because I'm Jewish. Because I was born a Jew. Somebody comes up to me and says, is there another reason? That's the only reason. So it just boggles the mind. When I'm invited to a school, each time when I talk to them, and then when the principal or the teacher comes up to me and says, you know, you made a big impression on these students, and would I please come back next year, another group of students. And I always have my stock answer, if I'm still here. And I take it day by day. I'm not a dreamer. If I wake up in the morning, thank the Lord, another day. I live day by day. After all, you know, I had surgery last August. And mind you, it was minor surgery, but it's still hard. I made it. And I got better so much faster than other people who had heart surgery. I don't know, maybe I'm destined to be here to talk about it. But it hurts, especially when it comes to a holiday, or when it comes to a bar mitzvah, or especially when I had my grandson bar mitzvah, and I keep thinking about my parents. And my two sisters. And when I remember my mother and my two sisters taken away the 15th of August 1942, I was already in France. And I can just imagine when they started to bang at the doors, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And because I live in a Jewish neighborhood, so I'm sure they didn't have to go and find out who is and who isn't Jewish. I can just imagine. And I thought that with time the wounds will heal, but it all comes back to me. And after all, I am 81 years old. I have somebody who takes care of me. This is extremely important.
You know, Dave, we talked now already. I think we've talked for, I don't know, for maybe 4 or 5 hours. And I just wanted to say thank you so much. You talked once about feeling guilty about things you've been through.
Oh, feeling guilty to
and
survive.
I want to tell you.
Feeling guilty to survive?
You have
Yes.
nothing to feel guilty about.
I know I shouldn't, but
Because you have added so much, and I think you've hit your purpose now. What you're doing now and talking to children and schools and students, this is why you survived.
Maybe,
And I-
maybe. There's one
I thank
thing
you.
I'd like to add, if
Sure,
I may, just
yeah.
1 second before you go any further. When I keep telling the Jewish community, get somebody else to talk. For a change, get somebody else. And Mitchell Bellman comes up to me when I said to him, get somebody else. He turns on to me, Dave, there is nobody else. I started to cry so hard. I said, who knows how much longer I'll be here. So I feel it's my duty to make sure that the people know. Because as the rabbi said, Rabbi Garten, it's not the same thing that when your children will say, my dad told me. Not the same thing at all. We need live witnesses. So I said, okay, I'll do it, always with a heavy heart, but it has to be done.
Oh, God willing, we'll bring this around. Thank you so much.
Following World War II and the Holocaust, David Shentow was eventually reunited with his only surviving relatives, including an uncle in Belgium. Weighing less than 90 pounds, David gradually recovered and eventually made his way to Canada. He later met Rose, who would become his wife and the mother of his 2 daughters. Together, to the present day, David, with Rose at his side, offers living testimony to classrooms of students and at conferences as a surviving witness of the personal horrors of the Nazi Holocaust against the Jewish people. Please continue to serve David's legacy as a witness in your own right, and continue to transmit this narrative. One lesson of the Holocaust is that we are all responsible for staying informed about what is going on in the community and in the world around us. We are each of us responsible for caring about and acting for the well-being of others, as well as for being an agent of positive social change.